Good afternoon, everybody. Glad y'all could join us for another show. Today's show is So Who Killed Malcolm X? We got Drea, our our co-host today, contributor. She's always on the show as much as she can. Glad you could join us,
Hey,
Drea. So I can't hear you a little bit.
thank you
What's
for
up with the
having me
volume?
too.
Oh, there you
Hey,
go.
okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good now.
All right. Hey, everyone. Hey, family. What's going
So
on?
today's show is basically who killed Malcolm X based off the Netflix drama or documentation or dramatization, however you want to word it, of the Malcolm X killing and who was responsible or who killed Malcolm X. Drea, did you get a chance to see the documentary?
I watched the entire documentary. I kind of like binge watched it in two parts and took some notes. So I got some notes for you guys here. Very interesting because we're heading into the 55th anniversary of Malcolm X assassination. So they kind of hit it right one time. My thoughts on just the whole docu series, whatever you want to call it. Why now? Why 55 years later? And so that's my question. I felt like it was this whole, like, I'm a big hip hop head, so you seen a lot of like docu series on who killed Biggie and Tupac, and so all this is like kind of combined into one, and this whole unsolved mystery. And as we mentioned before, it's like now we got the Netflix and chill. So hopefully this is not. I don't like to say woke, but it's kind of like why all this is surfacing now, and even to the point of the Godfather of Harlem with Bumpy Johnson. You see how that is surfacing as a docu series. So it's a lot of like things that make you say that's coming about. So
I had the opportunity to see the documentary as well. Let me try to give some people some context to the backdrop, or sort of say, is that one of the things that I don't think the documentary came off well was explaining the climate of America or in Black America back then, explaining that we were a breath away from being chattel slavery,
hmm
meaning the Nation of Islam started in 1930.
hmm
I mean, slavery was a generation prior, 40 years prior. Uh, so in the 60s, 50s, 60s, there was this major movement during the Black Renaissance as well as the Great Migration up north. It was a climate of racial pride where black men and black women were being, like now we're being told the kings and queens thing. A lot of people back then were being told, no, you somebody, you a god, stand up on your own 2 feet. Like some of us now may say we stand on our ancestors' shoulders, so to say. So I think that wasn't explained good in the documentary, as well as the brother Abdurrahman Muhammad, who did the documentary with Netflix. He had already wrote a book about it in
hmm
2010, I think, or
right.
2011. And anybody that knows anything about the Malcolm X murder would know, as well as that, the alleged shooter, the Star Ledger had did a story on him in 2011. The Star Ledger is one of the biggest was the biggest newspaper in New Jersey at the time, before it kind of like merged with NJ.com because they seen everybody was going digital. As well as the Daily News of New York had did a story. Basically, it was like, here's a killer hiding in plain sight.
hmm
I happen to know the alleged shooter, William Bradley, who was William X. I knew him before he, I knew him for about, he died in 2018. I've known him for about 10 years prior to all this coming on, around 2000, yeah, around 2000 I met him. Uh, I knew him before the accusations that would, see, before I didn't know who he was, so to say. I know him as Mustafa. And then when all the stuff came out, I would see
hmm
him and we would talk. So he would never talk about this situation when he was addressed about it, because people would ask him, people would try to get information from him, but he would never address it. So I just want people to know that I think that the documentary was very good
Hmm.
if you understand context, if you understand, the climate back then. And a lot of people, I noticed a lot of people on social media had put oh, these old jokers, man, they still ain't tell, they ain't supposed to tell. They ain't supposed to tell. It sounds crazy and it sounds harsh that people may not understand, but these guys was cut from a different cloth where they did not tell. Definitely if it didn't have anything to do with their personal business. If it wasn't their affair, they didn't tell rumors or they didn't tell what they heard or what they thought. Opposed to our generation, a lot of us always like to jump in situations and be like, oh, I heard such and such, or I did such. No, they weren't supposed to tell. And just to put some context into that, and some of the things that
Right.
you were saying you got out of the documentary.
Definitely. And I want to just piggyback on one thing you said about how older people, our elders, are not supposed to tell or didn't tell. You got to think about this. Back in the time with the Great Northern Migration, the reason why people had to leave because of lynching. So who you going to tell? The local police who was a KKK at night. You're going to tell them, oh, my uncle got lynched or whatever the case is. So they cut from that cloth of, I kind of have this or just guard up, and who can I really tell if my whole family is getting wiped out by white supremacy, Ku Klux Klan, especially if your family's from the South. So I just had to throw that in there. So but now people want to document, record, so I guess they want to be like, oh, sorry, social media wasn't back then, and I don't think a lot of people in this generation would be able to survive that generation. But
Yeah, because
had to be
we like to say that we tougher than our generation that came before us, or they was soft. In all actuality, like, and even me and you have discussed like why they didn't tell us. And I truly believe, and I'm starting to learn, is that they didn't tell us because certain things were not important.
right.
Their utter survival was more important than learning certain things or telling us certain things. They was trying to survive.
Exactly.
One of the key points is that he kind of, I know, Dre, you don't know the area. How do you think he made the people in Newark look in general?
I felt like he made them look like, not saying snitches, but I felt like he was very invasive. Which is, if you're doing an investigation, you have to be very invasive. You have to be bold. I think a lot of people was kind enough, to share a piece of the story of what was happening. I remember it was a scene. I can't think of which part in which the gentleman was it is it Q? I mean, the older gentleman, he got up, he got offended,
That's Carson. I
about
know him. I know him. That's Carson. I know him.
right. So he had got offended, and because we had to still think about it. I'm coming from the social service, the social work lens. People are still dealing with that trauma, right? You're still dealing with trauma, and then it's like, well, why are you coming back out here, open up old wounds? And then that's a whole nother level of trauma that you still have to continuously heal. So I think he didn't make the people look soft. I just think that they just kind of got caught off guard. Sometimes, let's be honest, people like to be as Suge Knight said, all up in the videos, and they gonna be like, "Well, I was there. I got my account, and this what happened," and it could be so off, on another level. So I just think that the people was kind of caught off guard, and people was offended. People put their guard up, and I also want to know, how did he build rapport? He probably built rapport by saying, "Hey, I'm a fellow, Muslim, whatever the case is," and probably kind of try to break the ice through that. So I always want to know, like, how did he break rapport and how did
Well,
he know who to scout?
one of the things in the community is that it's very easy. It's very easy to get it in. Sort of say you Muslim. You know what I mean? Sort of say you're
Hmm.
Muslim, so people gonna treat you like their brother.
Right.
Um, but certain questions are not asked because a lot of times people are looked at as, what you an agent? Like, what you asking all these questions for? And I think that, and I can't speak for Kassan. I do know him. He's an
Hmm.
elder, highly respected in the community. I think that when he asked certain questions, and then how that question was put at the end was, you have to understand the context back then.
Mm-hmm.
These brothers, most of these brothers were treated like they were dogs, like before, prior to that. Like, it may have not been no lynching that we know of up north, but they were coming from down south being lynched. They were
Right.
coming from being told they can't do some certain
Mm-hmm.
things. Uh, they had a he Elijah Muhammad instilled a lot of pride in people and
Right.
empowerment. A lot of people don't know they had something called the fish program. And they had a fish program that was so extensive that basically they had the docks. And a lot of people may be like, "Oh no, certain ethnicity ran the docks." No, they had a direct line from fish coming from Bolivia, where all of them had a fish program, and all throughout the northern states, they were selling fish all over the country,
Mm-hmm.
housing projects in New York, housing projects in Newark. Mosque number 7, where Malcolm X preached,
Mm-hmm.
was probably the most powerful mosque in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Elijah Muhammad was based in Chicago at the time,
Right.
Mosque number 7 was probably the strongest mosque. And then the second strongest was probably Mosque number 25 in
Mm.
Newark, New Jersey. So this is the context that I don't think that was really explained. That he
Right.
did say that how Minister James at the time, who was James Shabazz, who was the temple leader in Mosque number 25 in Newark, won at Farrakhan, but he still never explained the issue, the major issue that these two mosques, like you, they were the strength of the community of the nation.
Right.
As well as when you sold stuff, when you sold, as people know, bean pies, you had the restaurants, you had all these stuff. All the money, not some, not half, not a little, all the money had to go to Chicago. And
Mm-hmm.
then it was redispersed back to particular areas for to keep things going. But like, really, it was a major the fish program is something that a lot of people don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That was something major because they really like had a connection with Bolivia, getting ships over here and selling fish. So this is one of the things that I personally believe, and I haven't seen Kasem since this documentary came out.
Right.
That why I think he got so offended, because the mindset of the brothers back then was like, you talking about our father.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You talking about a man that, like, he literally, and even if you saw the commercialization of Malcolm X killing by Spike Lee. Even if
Mm-hmm.
you saw that movie, Malcolm even explained it like, here it is, I would have died for this man.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that in the documentary that's explained enough. Like, this man, Elijah Muhammad, even to this day,
Mm-hmm.
you may hear people that's not even in the nation, they'll say the Honorable Elijah Muhammad out of reverence for him.
Exactly.
I don't particularly say it, that's just me. But
Right.
even people that they'll say the Honorable Elijah Muhammad out of reverence and
Ex-
out of respect. So this is something that, like I said, I don't think that is explained well
Right.
enough.
And I like what you just said about because remember in the documentary they said that they had like a father and son dynamic relationship, and we also have to understand the context of, like you said, back in the 30s when Nation of Islam was started, and at that time a lot of lynchings was going on. So a lot of black men, or just probably like a lot of black people, period, looked at Elijah Muhammad as their father because maybe their fathers was lynched in the South. Elijah Muhammad came from Georgia, and the area where he came from was pretty much like lynch based heavy. And I don't know if you guys know that him and also the owner of Motown pretty much was neighbors, and their families decided to move out of Sandersville, Georgia, because of the high lynching that was going on, and felt that Detroit was a safer place because you were not hearing about lynching, and also too that was like a state to also build wealth as well. So we're talking about a different dynamic, compared to 2020. What I liked about the was I like how it showed the strength of Black people uniting, but I also like showing how people can have like this whole rap battle because you can pin two people up against each other, and I say like the black, the black messiahs, and be like, yo, hold on, like who am I supposed to follow now? And I felt at the time Malcolm X was probably such under so much pressure that he was like, you know what? If my life was to end today, so be it. I just think he was that, and heavy under stress. He's like, you know what, I feel the death. And if he was so intuitive, he just knew, like, you know what, my days are numbered. And it did mention that my days are numbered, but who was going to come at me? Is it the FBI? Is it the CIA? Is it, informants within, the NOI? So I think that, we kind of glance over, yo, all these people was in bed together. And at the end of the day, I remember the guy that was the informant, the black guy, I can't think of his name. He was like, yo, I had a pregnant wife. It's kind of like, I'm just trying to get the bag. And so here ushers in the capitalism. I'm trying to just get the bag. And so if I got to take out a black life, so be it. So that's what I got from a lot of it as well. It's like, you know what, at the end of the day, somebody got to get taken out. And Malcolm X, we have to also understand too, he didn't have resources. I'm talking about financial resources. Because once, he was pulled out of NOI on suspension, that was a done deal. He was like pretty much homeless, because you're talking about someone's coming from being a hustler, being locked up in Massachusetts. So he didn't have that safety net as Elijah Muhammad, right? And I'm
Yeah,
sorry, like,
that's key to also, like you said, understand is that he was literally broke after his house was burned or bombed down. He was literally broke. He had no. He was a man with a mission and a message. He had no contingent except a few people like Professor James Small, who we know,
right.
who's still around, who's still teaching. And very small people, and even Professor Small wasn't even in the country at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
he didn't have a lot of people around. He had no place to really preach.
Right.
He had no platform. Unlike us, we got social media, but we had me and you had discussed that before. That it's a lot of lessons to be learned for our
Definitely.
generation, and one of our guests makes a very interesting point. Toshiba, she said something. She said, I think it was important to do this documentary. It's about generational knowledge. For example, prior to Ava doing the documentary on the Exonerated Five, many knew nothing about the tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with her, and I do like to. One of the biggest things is that we need to uh, take from our elders while they're here, as we
Mm-hmm.
always say, get them their flowers while they're still with us.
Right.
And not just that, is to get this type of information because sometimes a book or a movie just doesn't give it justice. And
Exactly.
like one thing that I think that a lot of people left out with the Malcolm X thing is that because of the climate back then, Malcolm X was not a hero. He was a traitor. And in their doctrine or their thought pattern, he was literally a hypocrite.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is a man who was taught, and they had the belief back then that the white man was the devil and Elijah Muhammad was the messenger of God. Here it is when he gets suspended and then a year later goes over to Mecca,
Mecca.
he comes out and he finds out about what the religion is about. The religious aspect of what they said they
Right.
believe. He comes back and he says, contrary to what they all said they believe, no, Elijah Muhammad, you're not the messenger, and it is white people are not the devil. I
Right.
don't think people understand that when you have somebody who literally stabs your back, and you see this a lot of times on Facebook and social media.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people can't stand the attack, even if it may be true. An attack to someone's belief system, they gonna fight. Even if you put doubt in their head and be like, "Well, you believe in this, that, third. I don't believe in that. I'm gonna attack." So a lot of times, I don't think, like I said in the documentary, that was not context. That needs to be explained. Like, yo, he came back with that, though a lot of those followers wind up believing him 10, 15, 20, and even we see now 50 years later that back then, like, this guy came back with that and he was going after the quote unquote messenger. They couldn't take that. Like,
Right.
and even in the documentary, and he did say that if that quote unquote, if it didn't come out of Nork, it was going to happen regardless. That
Mm-hmm.
may be true, but like we go into the commercialization of Malcolm, and like me and you talked about, after Malcolm was killed, right? If anybody know anything about his wife Betty Shabazz, she wound up getting her degree,
Right.
going to college, Medgar Evers College. The commercialization came about right before Spike Lee's movie. We all
Right.
know about Malcolm as kids, I guess. Growing up, we knew who Malcolm X was. Some of us even went to Malcolm X Shabazz High School, that's in Newark. They teach you, and you may hear of his speeches. So a lot of times, people don't even know if his speeches were prior to being in the nation. I mean, being in the nation or leaving the nation. A person can't even tell by his speech. Some of his
Exactly.
speeches you could tell, and even in one of the documentaries, he said something. It was a speech the brother bought, and this is one of the good things I got about the documentary. He bought a speech that he
Mm-hmm.
was speaking so ill of Elijah Muhammad. I'm like, yo, he tripping. Because before he would just say, I broke away from them. These are the speeches that we heard. I broke away from them. They're on this. He actually blamed the whole condition of the oppression in America on them. He said they could stop it, but they're either unwilling to or don't want to. And then he would attack Elijah Muhammad. So I thought that was interesting, as well as, like I said, going into the commercialization, us looking at Malcolm X as a hero, I believe he's a hero. I believe he's a leader. I believe the charisma he had was incredible, incredible charisma. The charisma was incredible, and he teaches. I believe that he should be heroized, so to say. I won't say idolized. I'll say heroized.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh, it was just different back then.
Right. It definitely was different, especially so I had wrote down some things. So we gotta think about the '60s and what was going on. We're talking about Vietnam War. We're talking about still, northern migration, and also to the black household employment. So we talking about 8% of households was led by single mothers, and in 1960, 21%. So like it's going back to
Mm,
the whole lynching thing. And also too, sometimes you have to live in separate households. Like, your dad may still be in the South, your mom, your dad moved your mother up north and had to go back and get money or get the rest of the family as well. So sometimes we don't look at that. Also too, when I was looking at this documentary, I kept saying to myself, well, what's the difference? Because they always like to pin, MLK to Malcolm X. They one of the same at the end of
mm.
the day, even with their ideology. When Malcolm X went to make pilgrimage in Mecca, they wanted the same. So they pretty much wanted like equality for Black people, and kind of was doing this whole integrationalist. And I know people like to hear, oh no, Malcolm was about, pro black. They both was about pro black, but when he went to Mecca, you seen a whole different paradigm shift in Malcolm's thinking and holistic ideology as well. And I think as you mentioned, the NOI didn't take too kindly of that, was like, hold on, even to the point when Cassius K, aka Muhammad Ali, was like, nah, I'm gonna have to like fall back from him because, I really enjoy the aspect of just coming into Islam, and now I gotta pick sides. And of course, I'm gonna rock with Elijah Muhammad, because going back to the Black Messiah, I look at him as my father figure, and pretty much. I guess he read, a message to the Black man. This kind of shifted his whole, mindset and change as well. So you have to also take that into consideration as well. Um, Another thing that I gathered from the documentary that was kind of interesting too was just the Black pain that we often ignore, especially in Black men. The brother that was locked up And remember, he said he was 81 years old. I forgot his name. And his whole, I felt so bad for him because he only had a
Oh,
relationship with his daughter, the one
yeah,
that Hager.
yeah.
Um, I felt bad for him, and sometimes we don't acknowledge the black pain. We like to commercialize on it, but we don't acknowledge black men's pain when it comes to mass incarceration. Because mass incarceration been going on, let's be honest, since I'm gonna have it going to the 60s, and it just usher in now this whole big conversation, going into 2020. Imagine being locked up for a big part of your life, and then you know you're kind of like, okay, do I say that this innocent person, was the trigger man, and then that person still get locked up, and that weighs on your consciousness as well. So I thought that was interesting, and that was just more of a basic how he shut down too. That's basic psychology, sociology 101. Like how he shut down when he was talking about, well, are you innocent? Do you want to be exonerated? And remember, at the point they were sitting on the bench, he's like, do whatever you got to do. If you want to send a letter to try to get my name clear, do it. But I think at this point in time, he was 81 years old. He's like,
I,
hey,
I could speak to that. I could speak to that a little bit.
mm-hmm,
From experience, I think that a lot of people commercialize jail and prison, and
mm-hmm,
even our own culture. Like you get a lot of guys that don't want to talk about their experience in jail, and it may not have been bad. What I
right,
mean by bad is you go to jail, you do your time, you come home.
mm-hmm,
One of the things that he did that you're right is that I won't say that he lost hope because hope is what got him out.
right,
Me knowing people that got as people say forever. I got some friends that got a lot of time that I wound up doing time with. So that hope that they have is what gets them through the day and would eventually get them out on the street. One of the things that I do want to address is maybe we do need to talk about a little bit more. Maybe guys that have been behind that wall need to explain a little bit of the stuff that we had may have went through when we was in jail or whatever. So give some people understanding because a lot of times, like I said, people just don't want to talk about it. It ain't nothing
right.
bad. Jokers just did their time, sat down, and come home. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like so much so that even in one of the pages that I got, the assisting page, one of the biggest obstacles for a guy coming home from jail nowadays, most people may not know it, is just getting a basic ID.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting a basic ID could be an obstacle because
Right,
a lot of times you can't. The state you was born, got to go to the Capitol. They don't. This is how I had got my ID. They don't give you an ID unless you have an ID. So how do you get an ID? As complicated as I just said that, that's as true as it is.
right,
They don't give you an ID unless you have an ID to get an ID.
right.
Now that sounds like some of the stupidest thing a person could say, but it's the truth. I got a couple questions from a couple people that I want to reopen.
Okay.
Somebody said, and now the case is reopened.
Yeah.
Now, me and you both got different feelings about how do you feel about the case being quote unquote reopened?
Okay, since the case is reopened, so once again, like I said earlier, it's opening up more trauma for the Black community. Can be even more people being off code, as people like to say, people being off code. What is this going to solve? Is this going to clear a lot of folks' names? Is it going to bring up the dead and slander their name? What is this going to be the ultimate? So I look at it as the macro cosmic look. What is this going to solve for Malcolm X, his family? I mean, he's dead. A lot of people involved are dead. His daughters and his legacy is still here going on. What is that going to solve if it's going to get reopened? Because guess what? I think that's reopened. I think the Tupac case is still reopened. I think the Biggie's case is still reopened, and people get sensitive, right? We get in our feelings about it. But what is this going to solve at the end of the day?
Well, I I have a lot of mixed views about the case being reopened. One of the things is I do agree with you. What is it going to prove? What are they going to do now that they didn't do back then? I think it does tie, like you said, with MLK, because I think a lot of people don't know that the United States government was found guilty
Mm-hmm.
for killing MLK.
Right.
So if they find that the CIA uh, orchestrated this killing or whatever, or even if the brother that I know, William Bradley, Mustafa Shabazz, was complicit or was the actual shooter, he's dead now. What is
Mm-hmm.
it going to prove? So I think that a lot of times, and his family, his daughters, are due justice. Let's get that straight. They are due justice, and they do deserve that right. So it's a lot, as they say, a lot of moving parts. And if they find out the Nation of Islam is complicit, are they going to try to take their money? Are they going to try to take them down? And this is something we got to look at. That even though we may not be a part of that organization or may
Right.
not have a dog in the fight. Like, what is the purpose of opening the investigation now? They don't even really have the resources to do stuff like this. I know that a lot of times we believe that when we watch shows like Cold Case and all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that they just got a blank check to do this stuff. A lot of times they don't even have the resources. So if they do it,
Right.
I believe it would be great for his daughters because they have a right
Yeah.
to know, like I said, but I believe that his daughters know something.
Right.
One of his daughters, I have it somewhere here. One of his daughters, she just wrote a book I just bought. Very interesting book. She basically say "Growing Up X." I think that's the name of the book. I just bought it
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago. But and
Right.
another question was, do you feel ego took over Malcolm X?
Okay, so let's talk about that. But I also want to go back to the question before you talk about the daughter. So one of his daughters, I can't think of her name, had actually put out a hit on Farrakhan.
Yes.
Also, too, I think that this will be the last stake of NOI and Farrakhan because I think they want to just get rid of him. Period. Because he's been being on social media, his message has been being in jails as well. So we'll fast forward to that. So the ego. Let's talk about the ego real quick. And I always say ego is easing God out. So
Wait,
easing
wait. Let me finish. I just got one quick thing on the
Okay.
investigation. I want everybody to look up the guy Pio Gamma de Pinto. Pio Gamma de Pinto. He was a Nairobian journalist. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't know is that our elder, Dick Gregory,
Mm-hmm.
accused the CIA of killing Malcolm X. And he
Mm-hmm.
said that he was a very close friend of Malcolm during that time. And he explained that Malcolm, when he went to Mecca, did not only go to Mecca, he went to African countries.
Right.
And he met with a journalist named Pio Gama Demento. And this journalist was the guy who Malcolm wanted, with Malcolm's help, was going to go to the UN and bring the United States up on charges, basically genocide charges, in front of the UN.
Mm.
For those that like to do a lot of research, they can look into it. Basically, I did some background stuff. I'm not just lazy, somebody that just want to talk, but they can look it up and they'll see it. It's there. It's clear as day. This guy, this journalist from Nairobi, he got killed. I think the day after Malcolm, or either the day after, day before, the same day. So this is something you look at, and even in the autopsy, and the way that they show the podium, some people say that the way that the bullets are arching down, meaning that it was shooters in an elevated state. So
Mhm.
for conspiracy theorists and those that like to do research, this is some other story that our elder Dick Gregory said during that time and up until his death, that the
Mhm.
CIA was complicit as well in this murder.
Right. I believe that too. Especially like when the day of his death, the assassination, how it was only two armed police officers and how they was way up there in the building instead of like the Audubon being surrounded. So I always thought that was kind of interesting as well, and that was more context to that as well. Um, Going back to the ego, we all have ego, right? And like I said, ego, I always say easing God out at times. Sometimes we need our ego to propel us forward to progress your passion, your purpose. And I think with Malcolm, at the end of the day, I just think he kind of got caught up in, not only him being so charismatic, but his ego kind of did get him caught up in. But I don't think he was more like this whole narcissist, like, oh, y'all can't touch me, as you see in some other people. He knew his demise was coming very soon. And I think when you're in tune with that, when you know, like, you're going to say some really truth to power stuff, I think he was more, I don't like to say humble, but he was more like, yeah, I know my time is going to come. When, I don't know. I think that he kind of backtracked and backpedaled a bit on the message. I mean, we're human beings. We get sometimes inconsistencies with our messaging. Was there probably some parts in which he's like, yo, I got all this power. I could just lift a finger and say, yo, go do this. I think he did get caught up with that. I also think too, it was just a egocentric thing. Like, I have an ego, and also Elijah Muhammad, because since people still look at him as a Black Messiah, I think his ego was out of control as well. But I think Malcolm had that little glimpse of like, yo, oh wow, like I can, like tell these people to jump off this building and they're gonna do it. That's my perspective on that.
I think he. I don't. I won't say Malcolm had ego. Um, I think that a lot of times is that when we're in position, and we see it today with social media and some of us how we go about. Sometimes we think that we could be in a better position than the person that's talking. Sometimes we feel as though we could do better. Malcolm X, charisma wise,
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Me personally, and I'm a person who I like to say that I read a lot. I'm well read. I don't think that nobody in the last 80 years had more charisma than probably him and Barack Obama. Charisma wise,
Right.
these they knew how to, as we say, they knew how we say they knew how to work a room. They had an
Mm-hmm.
audience. They knew how to work up the audience. This is something that is a gift.
Right.
So with that, and Brent him having a message, and he wasn't considered the messenger, or he wasn't the leader. I believe that it was a lot of seeds of dissension sowed. It was very easy. Here it
Mm-hmm.
is that he had this charisma and he was known in the media more, even though he was always say, I'm a minister of Elijah Muhammad. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
representative of Elijah Muhammad. That's all well and dandy, but still the media and people gonna give you credit. I mean,
Right.
we see that in any aspect. The face of something is that organization. No matter
Definitely.
what you say, you could always give other people credit and reverence or whatever. Whoever has the most charisma and is more out and people cling to, they're gonna be the face. And this goes like, when we see sports, we always see certain people talking about sports. We'd be like, "Oh,
Right.
that's the face of that group, or that's the face of that football team." So it's very important. One of the things that you had brought up, Drea, was these documentaries. And so I was doing some research last night, and I was saying these people, Netflix, man, Netflix is good, y'all. They actually have a documentary in the works on Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah.
Like so soon. So
Very.
soon. It's like so soon, but to go back
But
to
you know
that.
what? This is why I think it is too. And then we can go forward with this. I think people are looking for the Black Messiah. And what I mean by that, I think people, we at a desperate time. When I'm talking about we, I'm talking about Black Americans. We at a desperate time. We are looking for like that Black voice to like, not saying soothe our pain or rock us to sleep, but kind of like, I'm gonna be honest, like save us from the depth of the zero wealth and all this police brutality, toxic behavior. I think someone's looking for that. And if you ever notice, every decade, someone's the Black Messiah, whether it's through music, whether it's through a message, whether it's through sports. They're trying to find this Black Messiah for 2020.
And that segues to always something that we talk about. And it's funny that Malcolm, one of his favorite quotes was, celebrities and comedians are not just spokesmen. And I think that unfortunately for us is that uh, we miss that lack of sense of community,
Right.
community connection, family. So we look at these celebrities and entertainers as leaders in our everyday struggle. And I one of the things that on a personal note that I always laugh is when people put a couple up and they be like relationship goals.
Right. And after some,
Relationship goals? You don't even
like,
know these people. Like
they're trying to
relation
bring each other up. They're trying to
yeah.
each
Yeah.
other, but like relationship goes right. Exactly.
And that's one of our biggest issues is that's what happens is we look at a person with money. One of the
Hmm.
biggest things we look at a person with money and look
Yes.
at them as like they were so successful or whatever. This is someone I'm gonna follow, and this is a clearly a form of lack of understand, lack of knowledge of self, because this
Yes.
stuff didn't happen up until like the '60s when Malcolm started explaining this stuff. One of Toshiba brings up a good point. She said, "Let's not confuse ego with heartbreak. Malcolm was heartbroken and disappointed
Yeah.
in Elijah Muhammad's infidelities with minors that produce
Yes.
children. Malcolm
Yes.
was heartbroken and called this out and reevaluated all things Elijah taught him, and he questioned his intentions." You're right.
That's true.
You're
That's
right.
very
One
true.
of the things that what Toshiba said is people gotta understand that Malcolm was hurt. This
Yes.
man literally took him out of, in his words, the gutter,
Yep.
cleaned him up, and gave him life. So,
Right.
like, just as much as Malcolm felt that, hundreds of thousands of followers felt the same
Hmm.
thing. And when Malcolm began to question and attack him, it's brought a lot of hatred towards Malcolm and a lot of dissension. And even, those are the things that I know from research and I know from secondhand information. If anybody wants to look up Minister James Shabazz, who ran Mosque 25 at the time, and you could just do your own history. I don't want to repeat nothing online and nothing. You just do your own history on Minister James, Mosque 25 during the 70s and what happened and what later happened to him dying and so forth. You do your own research with that. I'm not touching that. And the reason why I'm not touching that is because of the closeness I may or may not have with people involved in that situation or
Hmm.
know of that situation. That's something that I think that a lot of us need to do a little bit more and ask our people. Dre, I know you're originally from Rhode Island, but you moved down there. We're close to this up this way where I'm at,
Right.
um, and I don't think that a lot of us realize how close we are to a lot of situations. Like even the the Moorish Science Temple started in Newark. Like Drew Ali started
Right.
his movement in Newark. So I don't think a lot of people know. Like, oh,
Exactly.
they might meet some people that say they Moorish American Muslims,
Right.
and they be like, "What you mean?" You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
because they right now Moorish Science Temple is big in Chicago,
Right.
but it's like it's based out of Newark, New Jersey.
Right. And I think a lot of times too, me being from Boston, and like you said, when you're not connected to being Muslim or Islam, I knew about Malcolm X because he grew up in Roxbury. I'm not from Roxbury, I'm from Mattapan, but I've been to that area so many times. And it's a lot of Black history that was instilled there in Boston. And just seeing them selling the final call, knowing where the mosque was at in Grove Hall, seeing their businesses in Grove Hall, which is like a Black Mecca in Boston as well. So, like you said, a lot of times we're connected to it. We don't know how close connected we are to it because being from, on the East Coast, especially, like the northeastern states, a lot of that Black nationalism was birthed in those states, in those cities. So, like you said, we don't realize how closely connected we are. So,
So I didn't want to mess with nobody and be like, so who really killed Malcolm X? Like I ain't gonna be revealing no big old secret, but I don't know. I don't know, and I don't think none of us will ever know the actual story. Like we said, they are going to open up the investigation, but really, like who's going to pay for the resources for this to be opened up? Like
right, because the brother was even running.
definitely after.
as well. The brother that's from Providence, Abdul Muhammad, he was running out of resources. And I mean, I commend him for even having that passion. And that's his life work. We can't tarnish his life work. He was even running out of resources and time on Who Killed Malcolm X. And sometimes this can chip away from your holistic self, your mental health, because you like trying to go down this dark path of like, man, this person's my hero. Why did he get killed? And when you're like keep trying to chip away of at this investigation, in which I feel everybody had a hand in it. Everybody had a hand in it. So I can't say this person. Yeah, we know people, shot shot him, but it was also masterminds behind that too that we will never ever know about.
So let me ask you, and we discussed this behind the scenes. What can we learn from his killing?
Whew, we gotta take a breath on that. What can we learn about the killing? This is one thing I definitely can say is if you have a grievance with someone, right? And I'm talking about being on call, whatever the case is in the black community, have that issue with them. Like, go to them. Also, too, we have to pump the brakes on this idol worshiping. I think we worship people, money, and things too much, and it makes us unravel. Oh, and I forgot to mention organizations too, and it makes us unravel. And do your own research and your own due diligence because this is a big. I mean, this whole like the assassination of Malcolm X, the documentary. You can see a whole lot of organizations now that's black. You may love some of the organizers, the founders, a lot of behind the scenes people are unraveling and you're going to see. And now since it's so easy to get the bag, if someone gets the bag behind closed doors, you're going to see some ish hit the fan, and it may be even more, hate to say it, assassinations or assassination of character or slander as well, in a literally in a figurative way. So we have to learn how to like really have our path. Yes, we know what our lineage is. Yes, we know that country for 400 plus years. We know all that. But what are we going to do about it? And also, start at home and help our own community instead of following this one person and thinking that they're the Black Messiah.
Yeah, I second that because it's interesting because this is how me and you met. We both believe in reparations, and we met basically through a network trying to get us reparations. Um, One of the biggest things that I did learn is because I had knew the story and it was like hood folklore in a way. So when I happened to watch it, I'm like, it's on already because I just happened to be home last Friday, and I
Right.
was like, let me I was bored, so let me watch something. And so I watched it. So one of the things I learned is that you when you describing history, if you weren't there, you have to try to explain context.
Hmm.
You have to explain context. It's very very important, and this is one of the things that I think that some of our elders when they telling us stuff and they'd be like, "You wouldn't understand." They'll say
Right.
they'll tell you a story and they'll be like, "You wouldn't understand." So that basically means, in their form of context, how we can learn is like you said. The social media aspect is like we nobody wins in a social media war
They don't.
because what happens with social media, you may not think that you're a leader or you may not think that you got followers. People may follow you. And in the social media war, instead of picking up that phone, going in that little mailbox, say, "Yo, call me."
Right.
Even to the point now, people even want to record the conversation and then try to twist the conversation. Still be able to pick up the phone and be like, "Yo, I don't know if I came off the wrong way." Nobody wants to take the high road. Everybody wants to be right. Um,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
also, we got to understand the invisible force. When you're fighting white supremacy,
Yes.
know that, and I mean white supremacy for what it is. I want the audience to understand it. It is white
Hmm.
supremacist. It
Hmm.
is an ideology that's there. Though
Right.
those some of us may be blind and be like, it's not going on. It is there.
Mm-hmm.
Know that even in the movie, even in the documentary, they said Malcolm's letters were being cut off. They weren't getting
Right.
to Elijah. Not only that, it's known fact that the FBI would try to incite and they would write letters and forge Malcolm's signature to the
E-
letters.
Exactly. And it's
So
still doing that to this day. You're talking about J. Edgar Hoover, who had a hatred for black folks, especially black organizations. What's the difference now? You have black extremists, they on the list. Black Lives Matter and all these organizations as well. So as Q said, I didn't mean to cut you off. You have white supremacy that you're fighting, and this has been systems placed globally. We know that it's definitely here in the United States, but it's globally, and I think people get that message confused. And it's all about policies and how it's going to keep you and your family locked out of so many situations. Um, and people can that look like us, and as we see in the documentary, can be tools of white supremacy as well by being informants, by being plants, by being agents. So I think sometimes we miss the message on that too.
yeah, because the brother said his wife was sick, so he justified working for them people
Yes.
because his wife was pregnant. I mean, his wife.
Yeah.
He was like, my wife pregnant. So we gotta be mindful of that. And then even to the point for those of us that know anything about CPR, the cop that was there when Malcolm X got shot, why are you giving him mouth to mouth when he got shot? Why are you giving him mouth to mouth? And he got
Right.
open wounds. Like, come
Exactly.
on. So
That, oh, I got quote unquote tired when they was like, "Yo, why you down there giving him CPR?" Oh, I got tired.
yeah, even to the point where I saw some stuff where he even felt bad for participating in it because
Right.
it's like, damn, as a police officer, his number one objective is to preserve life. So here it is, he was there to infiltrate, but the
Mm-hmm.
man got shot. So he's trying to, in his words, revitalize the man.
Right.
Is that more? You got any more for us, Dre? I know any more.
Um,
I mean, we're about to wrap up. If ain't nobody got no more questions in the queue, I
just make
mean,
sure you guys check it out. It's a very good docu series, and look at it from a lens, um, from a global lens, and look at it from a different. Don't look at it surface level. Look at it from like a scientist, social sciences lens. 'Cause that's my background. Do a lot of assessment and assess it from, like I said, 55 years fast forward to now. Of has things really changed, or has things progressively got worse for Black Americans? And something that we didn't mention too was you're talking about we was people was living in a universe without many immigrants, and
yeah,
how part as well, and how that kind of opened the
yeah.
door to other things as well.
One thing, one question I got that my friend Kevin asked, and this is something that you're segueing to. He asked, and I'll go first, then you go. He
Mhm.
said, "Do I think the gentleman that put the documentary together was credible?" I believe Maul. He was absolutely credible from his perspective,
Definitely.
and the reason why I say that because he didn't come in with the biases. He
Right.
gave a documentary based off the information that was given to him and that he could find through the Freedom of Information Act.
Hmm.
However, him like myself, if I was to go into that situation doing the same thing, I would probably, based off of using resources, I would probably come up with the same information.
Right.
But the key point is context. The key point
Right.
is understanding the climate that was going on during that time. Malcolm X, I need everybody to understand this who may or may not see this. Malcolm X was not the Malcolm X that we say today. And what I mean by that, he was not
Hmm.
considered a hero. He's a hero to us. He's a hero now, but he was not considered a hero. As much as people don't like to admit it and like to say it, they considered him the worst of all hypocrites. The
Right.
and even in documents that tape recorders that the FBI had, Elijah Muhammad said that all hypocrites need their heads cut off.
Exactly.
So, you have anything to add with that, Drea?
No,
Oh, so to back to what Drea was saying. 1 second. Back to what Drea was saying was that had Malcolm and this journalist, Pio Gamma DePinto of Nairobi, went to the UN and charged the United Nations with genocide and hate crimes towards black people. And what I mean by black people, everyone, is descendants of slaves. And the reason why I'm gonna say this
right.
is because you may have had your Garveys, you may have had
Mhm.
trickled people from African countries, but it was not immigration. It was not our second generation
Right.
black brothers and sisters back then. It was not this influx of black people during the 60s because the Immigration Act turned up in the 70s, like
Mm,
really turned up and sort of say the floodgates was open.
right.
So to understand if he would have put America on the world stage and took them to court, it would have messed up their program on what
Exactly.
they were trying to prove and sell.
Right.
You got something to add, Drea?
No, you was right on point with that. It would have definitely messed up the policies that we see now of, like open borders, seeing the influx of immigration occurring, what we're seeing now. But now we're seeing like it's kind of regressing, since Trump is in office. Um, so that's a good point that you made. And, I think the gentleman was credible that did the documentary, that wrote the book. He was 3 years old when Malcolm X got assassinated, from Providence, Rhode Island. I lived in Providence for 6 years, and if you guys know anything about the scope and everything, how he opened it up was talking about dating white women, and police brutality. Like I said, that was he was 14 years old. Let's go back to now. You still see some of that now, so that kind of like triggered, like, yo, this is my life path, this is my life purpose, and this man was my hero. So I think he was very credible. Um, I hope that he gets all type of awards for it, because that's a lot of grind. You putting your life on the line to like peel back these layers that people don't want to discuss, that happened 55 years ago. So salute to him for even for being brave. We don't talk about bravery anymore. For being brave and using his resources that I'm pretty sure he had lack of, because of the type of job he had. It's not like he was making 6-7 figures at his job, for doing his documentary. So salute to him.
Well, that's about it. That's about it, everybody. I'm glad everybody could join us for the show. Appreciate everybody in the comments. Appreciate everybody watching. Like I always say, like, share the page. I mean, all criticism is good criticism. Just show some respect. For any
Yep.
inquiries, it's at let's talk 5600 at gmail.com, as well as on the Facebook page. You can personally inbox me, myself. Drea has a platform as well. It's
Yeah.
called Brown Girl Boston, right, Drea?
Brown Girl from Boston. I'm on Facebook and also on IG. So make sure you check me out there as well.
She's also a career and life coach, so she has numerous videos that we've done, and like I said, she brings a different perspective every time. We love her on the platform, and we know that she'll be coming on the platform again soon.
Yes.
Thanks everyone, and have a great day.